Okay, in this video, let's take a look at the WNBA 2024 free agency and off-season moves. The theme of this video will be credit card debt and windows, as it does not seem that many WNBA teams respect those two things. First, with windows, some of you might know I grew up in Houston and was a Houston Rockets fan, and we have been a victim of windows and benefited greatly from a window being just slightly ajar. So, first of all, we have been the beneficiary of windows as my Houston Rockets took advantage of Michael Jordan retiring, or was it a suspension, and won the championship 2 years in a row. That second year when he was coming back, it's not an asterisk, I don't care what you say, and won those two championships. That's taking advantage of a slight window ajar. But then my Rockets were victimized by a window when they put together a nice little team with Harden and Chris Paul in the backcourt. We were set to do damage. They were going to challenge Golden State. We were one of the few NBA teams not to cower and take the fight to them, but ultimately we came up short because Golden State was just a ridiculous super team. And really, that's the question for the Seattle Storm. It was a no-brainer. If Nneka Ogwumike wants to be on your team and you can get Diggins Smith, then you have to sign them. I understand that. But in reality, what have you signed up? You've basically got a really, really good three, but not a big three. And that will be the question. If you have four strong players, so they'll have Diggins Smith, obviously, with Ogwumike and Jewel Lloyd, and then mix in Izzy Megnabor and Whitcomb, you've got a really, really solid, really good team. They're all good, not great, but good. But they don't have that superstar, i.e. Asia Wilson, Breanna Stewart, even a Thomas as well. So you're really hoping that your window opens up either through some fluke during a game or potentially an injury. I'm not wishing for injury. I'm not, but they're a part of the game. And if one of the major stars gets injured, then all of a sudden Seattle is the next one up in the next team. But Seattle's at risk of major injuries as well, as they're counting on two players that are over 30, obviously. And that's sort of the tricky, risk or calculation that the Seattle Storm are taking. And I don't begrudge them for doing that, but I tend to go with Sue Bird that says you need to tank to get that core player, that franchise type player, and says teams do it. Take a listen.
Hi, Sue. You talked about how this franchise went through a rebuild and how that was something that was really special to you. So I'm curious what you think it takes for a successful rebuild to happen in this league. And what about that process, or what it taught you, what that process taught you in your career?
Well, you got to get the number one pick. That's pretty much what this conversation is, let's be honest. I'm not encouraging tanking. I understand this is not what you want to have happen, but I can name maybe two teams that have ever had success, like going to the finals, winning a championship, that don't have a number one pick on them or don't have, multiple top three picks. I think women's basketball, given that we only have 12 teams, I also think women's basketball, when you have special talent, that's when you win. You win a championship because you have a player like Stewie on your team. You win a championship because you have a player like Lauren on your team. See, I keep eating this. You win a championship because you have players like Diana Taurasi or Maya Moore on your team. It's kind of the sad truth, and I feel really lucky that, I've played with multiple. I've played with, two, franchise, epic, Hall of Fame, legendary players. That's how you win, and it's really difficult to do it otherwise. The teams that have so much credit, and I think a lot of that's when things like free agency come into play, and that's when you can put together and find the pieces. But generally speaking, you need that one.
So again, don't begrudge them for doing it, the Storm, or think they've done anything wrong. I'm just not sure if they're going to get a championship out of this with the core players that they have brought in, to be determined. But the Phoenix Mercury, now they need to be laughed at and made fun of.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like this?
Again, it's the whole window argument. They really don't have a chance at a title, even with the moves that they have made, bringing in Copper and Cloud, Rebecca Allen to go along with Sophie Cunningham. As this is also dependent on Diana Taurasi being the GOAT once again, and that's not happening. She's battled injuries the last few years. She's not the player that she was. She's not the efficient player, and that's not going to return as well. Griner's deficiency has gone down, or efficiency has gone down. So for them to double down and sort of make this recent trade that they did with Chicago is crazy. So if you are not aware, the Mercury have traded for Copper with Chicago and given them their number 3 pick in 2024, which isn't a big deal. But the other thing they have given them is their number 1 pick in 2026. Now, if you look back at the history of this mismanagement is just mind-boggling. So initially, the Mercury traded with the Sky after they both faced each other in the championship. So that offseason, the Mercury gave up a 1 to bring in Diamond DeShields. It did absolutely nothing for them. I think she was injured most of the season and just never really played well. She came back the following year and what didn't give them a lot. But then 2 years later, they were desperate to get rid of DeShields so they could re-sign Sophie Cunningham. So they got in a trade with Dallas where essentially they dumped DeShields' salary to Dallas, but they also had to give swap rights to their 2025 first round pick to New York. And the piece that they got back from New York was Michaela Onyanwerne. So now, following this trade, they now have no pick this year, which is fine because it sounds like it's going to be a 2-player franchise draft with Brink and Clark. And then they have no pick next year because New York has the swap rights as well. They've given away their number 1 pick in 2026. All this with Diana Taurasi, who's on max salary in 2024, unrestricted free agent in 25. So this is just crazy. You've dumped all your draft capital for this old team, and then you can't even rebuild in 25, 26 or bottom out. It's unbelievably bad. Now, Pelton gave them, I think, like a B- of a grade. I would give them a D, verging on an F. We will see what happens, but this is just not with any foresight or thought, and it's just the way this organization has been run, and it looks like will continue to be run because this one, I'm scratching my head over this trade. I much prefer what Chicago's done and said, no, we're going to pay off our credit card, all this draft debt. So they've traded their one key asset to get into the 24 draft and hopefully get a solid player with the number 3 pick. It might be a speculation player, but it might wind up being a very solid player. Now in 2025, the Dallas Wings have the swap rights to their pick, so they still have a 1, but it will be Dallas's pick, and Dallas will have theirs. Thank you very much, James Wade. You make these trades and then you run. Ridiculous. But now they're back into the 2026 draft because Wade also traded that one away to sign Marina Mabry for 3 years. It goes till 25 at $208K and $210K. So he just gave up the farm to bring in Mabry, who wasn't going to be re-signed by Dallas anyway. It just boggles the mind. But Chicago said, nah, we're a new regime. We're going to eat it, take our lumps right now, and start the rebuild, just like the Los Angeles Sparks have done. So now they took the salary dump of Kian Nurse and got the 4 pick from Seattle as well. They did a sign and trade with Atlanta for Jordan Canada, and now they have the number 8 pick. So this year they'll have the 2, 4, and 8 picks to bring in some rookies, and I know they're not all going to hit. I understand that, so don't make this argument to me. I understand that. But the number 2 pick is Cameron Brink, most likely, and that is a core player, and they can tank their butts off for next season, and then they're likely to get another core building block, potentially a Paige Beckers, or be in the mix for that, which I don't think is bad, and I think fans would understand taking your lumps this season to get young core players to build your franchise around, because that is the cheat code for winning, as Sue Bird outlined earlier. Now, I will finish off with this. Now, take off your fan goggles and look at this Try to be objective. But if you're not one of the super teams, i.e. the New York Liberty or Las Vegas Aces, what team would you want to be the fan of or be most excited about? Would you be excited about being the Indiana Fever, especially if Clark comes out? The Los Angeles Sparks, you'll take your lumps, but you can see the future is coming. Or would you rather be the Seattle Storm? You've got a ready-made team and you're ready to go, and you might get into the championship if the breaks go your way. Or finally, would you rather be the Phoenix Mercury and let's load up and make one last run with the GOAT? To hell with the draft picks. We will just figure it out later. We might get another credit card to pay that off. You can always figure it out down the track. You let me know what you think, but if I was going for one, I would be most excited if I was a Fever fan. 1, because you're building. Then 2, the Sparks. Then 3, Seattle, because there's no long-term commitment. And then 4, the Phoenix Mercury. You are a tire fire with no future. Anyway, leave your comments, thoughts, and your poison. All is welcome. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a great night.